Alright, gang. I have a shocking confession to make. I like sickly, skinny white boys. I know, what a crazy confession, who would have ever guessed?
Hello? Anyone in there?
There's his voice.
Hello? Are you gonna open the door? Any time?
No, I'm just gonna listen to you talk. Anyway, I like sickly, skinny white boys, and it's all Tumblr's fault. Or maybe Tumblr just happened to cater to me? Which came first, the degeneracy or the Tumblr Sexymen? Well, I mean, as I'm about to demonstrate, the degeneracy definitely came first, but maybe not specifically in my case? I'm unsure, it's a fucking paradox. But anyway, this video is about Tumblr Sexymen. Now, this super trope, I guess you could call it, this fandom trend or whatever, it's a little bit controversial. It was, of course, originally used as a call-out to continue making fun of anything teenage girls enjoy because they're the scum of the earth, apparently? I don't know, I personally think preteen boys are way worse, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video, if anyone else had made it, would be to examine this trope from an objective perspective, to not clown on it, but not fawn over it either. I will fail at both of these goals. In fact, I will simultaneously clown and fawn, because I used to be head over heels for many of these sexy men. I was one of the more stereotypical of these fangirls, at least in some ways. Main difference was I at least had a little self-awareness. I never really got into the weird trend of AUing the sexy men or anything like that, and I was always a bit aware of how ridiculous it all was. I enjoyed sexy men in moderation, we'll put it that way. And I still do, though maybe with a bit more irony as I've aged. But I truly think that these types of characters get way more flack than they deserve. Again, it seems mostly due to the fact that people seem to despise anything teenage girls like, but I'm not going to get into the politics today. All I will say is that as the landscapes of Tumblr and now Twitter have changed, there has been backlash and re-examination of the sexy men, how they're always skinny white twinks, how oftentimes they'll be gay bait, etc. We're not going to step into that territory, because frankly, I'd rather avoid my comment section turning into a dumpster fire. Let's just acknowledge that it's there, move on, and let me enjoy my skinny white twinks in peace. So is everybody ready? Got your wading boots on? Your rubber gloves? Because we're going knee deep into this shit and are going to fish some incredible and very silly things out of the bog of the sexy men. You love them or you hate them. Let's go. It's time to talk about the strangest of cryptids, the Tumblr sexy man in the wild. So, the three of you who live under a rock are probably a little confused, I'm sure. What the hell is a sexy man, and why is it one word? Unfortunately, that's a bit of a loaded question, and like most things on the internet, the exact definition of what makes a sexy man is highly debatable. The official Sexypedia defines the phenomenon as a character considered questionable taste, sick, to onlookers of the disproportionately large group that considers them sexy. That original is a little bit jumbled, so to put it into slightly better words, and to add a few of my own, a sexy man is a character who to the average viewer would not be considered incredibly attractive or sexy. This could be for many reasons, including physical appearance, personality traits, a non-human form, or a simple case of not being viewed by the story they appear in as particularly attractive. However, this character is, for whatever reason, disproportionately drawn in a sexy way and otherwise claimed to be as such by a particularly rabid fan base. So, by this definition of the trope, Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls is your stereotypical sexy man, whereas Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or really, anyone from JoJo's, is not. There are many other common ways to identify a sexy man and many subtropes associated. We'll get into these in more detail later, but for now, here are the most common ways to spot a sexy man. More often than not, a sexy man will be a villain or act somewhat antagonistic in their source material, but will have a horde of fangirls trying to explain away his actions with a tragic backstory or some other excuse. A sexy man is almost by definition, with one or two exceptions, a skinny white twink, usually well-dressed, often British. If said character is being humanized, they will always be drawn in some sort of formal wear, most often with a bow tie and suit vest. Most importantly, to be considered a sexy man, they need to make use of the patented sexy man smirk. Ahem, roll the montage. Oh, this character looking a little familiar now? Yeah, you've seen him. I know you have. In fact, you've probably already got 1 or 2 examples in mind if for some reason you didn't recognize one from the montage. In fact, you probably have many, many examples. In fact, you're probably thinking about one particular character right now. How do I know? Because I'm psychic, that's why. Nah, I'm kidding. I just know the internet better than that. But as much as I hate to, as much as I loathe that this is the character people think of when they think sexy man, we have to talk about the history of sexy men and the onceler. God, I still hate that that sentence came out of my mouth. Now, the common consensus is that the codifier of this trope, the Antichrist heralding the dawn of the apocalypse, or maybe just the moment people had realized this had gone a little too far, is the onceler, specifically his portrayal in the Illumination adaptation of the original Dr. Seuss book, The Lorax. As a side note, make a video on why Illumination ruins everything, but I digress. I'd like to argue, however, that the sexy man trope goes way further back than that people in general have always been thirsty beyond belief, even before the internet allowed them to get that way. I mean, duh, but bear with me. The only way I really have to show this is through official source versions of this trope. What I mean by that is that actual films and shows have taken a character that is not really supposed to be sexy in the original source material and have made it so. And I'd just like to illustrate that this trope has been happening since the dawn of time. So, just who is this mysterious character, you might be asking, that has caused a stir in the heart of our dear Miss Hedgehog? The Mad Hatter. It's the Mad Hatter. Okay, there, I said it. For context, I am of course speaking of the Mad Hatter from the story Alice in Wonderland, which is about a little girl who falls down a rabbit hole and somehow gets high on fucking LSD from it because she sees some really weird and fucked shit. One of these encounters is with a character called the Mad Hatter, who is holding a tea party with some friends in the middle of the woods. In the original book, he is not really described, although we are given a picture and he looks like this. He's, kind of a gremlin. Just a little. Not really someone you'd consider attractive or even remotely sexy. Further portrayals of him in the Disney version of the story have him looking like this. That's a little less off-putting, but now he just looks like a weird uncle. And I know what you're thinking. Ah, yes, the Johnny Depp portrayal of the character was in fact incredibly sexy. Which it was, yes. But no, I'm not talking about Johnny Depp, or Sebastian Stan, or even Andrew Lee Potts, but holy mama, emo hatter make a girl go Sorry, what was I talking about again? Right, sexy Mad Hatter. These are all modern interpretations of the character, and in modern times, everything is made sexy. No, the original Sexy Hatter goes all the way back to 2007. It's all over on High School Horoscopes fall. I'm kidding. It's 1966 and Peter Cook's version of the character.
Anyway, the table's laid for a great deal more than 3.
Your hair wants cutting.
You shouldn't make personal remarks. It's very rude.
Oh. Why is a raven like a writing desk, I wonder? Lightest idea.
Well, I think you might do something better with your time than waste it asking riddles that have no answers.
This is from the BBC television play of Alice in Wonderland from, yes, the year 1966. This version is, a little high. I mean, it's from the 60s, what did you expect? And clearly someone thought it would be a good idea to make the Dormouse and the March Hare just 2 guys, but that's not the point. The point is, look at this man. Wowee, what a looker, holy crap! They really just said, Mad Hatter, you mean that little gremlin guy? Let's cast satiric genius and solid 9 Peter Cook as this man. That's a great idea. And I mean, it was, but my point is that someone clearly had the subconscious thought at some point to make him hot. And they did. And it's excellent. This is, as far as my research takes me, the first time that the Mad Hatter had been portrayed by anyone besides an old kooky character actor. And the trend would continue. To be fair, the Mad Hatter is everyone's favorite character from Alice in Wonderland, unless you're a Cheshire Cat fan, I guess, and he's gotten his own fair share of sexy interpretations. Thanks, anime! So it makes sense that he would become one of the OG sexy men. I mean, he fits a lot of the tropes. He's crazy, which is always a plus for sexy men. He's a fine dresser and has a sort of aristocratic air about him, which is originally supposed to be ironic, of course, and part of his madness, because, you know, he's a hatter. So my conclusion from all of this is that women have been thirsting over crazy people since the dawn of time. Thank you very much. And this all leads up to the modern sexy man movement. It had been happening on the internet since the internet existed because, duh, but they are called Tumblr Sexymen for a reason. Because Tumblr is where the trend went from, hey guys, raw XD, I made an art of Jeff.Killer Smexy because yas, to becoming essentially for a lot of people a whole lifestyle. Tumblr is a really bizarre anomaly in the general sphere of social media platforms. Most modern social media sites encourage short, rapid bursts of content and often recommend you posts or videos from people you are not following in order to maintain your attention and keep you on the site for longer. Tumblr is its own beast. Long posts and enormous threads of conversation are the norm there, and the only things you'll see on your dash are from the people you follow. It's very easy to keep yourself in a very specific realm of content, which leads to some really bizarre insular communities. Massive conversations are to be had there, but the site is also rife with misinformation and, of course, incredible amounts of arbitrary drama. This has chilled out over the last couple of years, with Twitter now claiming the title of Toxic Hellhole Supreme, but in the early to mid-2010s, Tumblr was the home of fan culture. Alright, I think I've stalled for long enough. I've got to talk about the Onceler now. So we will be discussing a variety of sexy men in this video, but for this history section, there are specifically 2 sexy men that are important to the history of this trope, not only because of their infamy, but for the general reach they claimed outside of their own fan bases. And the first is the Onceler. So, some context. In 2012, Illumination Entertainment, now just shortened to Illumination for the sake of minimalism, released a 3D adaptation of the Dr. Seuss story The Lorax, which is about a capitalist named the Onceler who comes to a paradisical land full of these gorgeous trees called truffula trees. So, of course, being a capitalist, he decides to start cutting them down and making cheap commercial products out of their beautiful tufts for schmucks to spend their money on. This angers the guardian of the paradise, or something. Being a metaphor and a children's story, most of this stuff is never really explained. He is called the Lorax, and he speaks for the trees. The rest of the story is a downhill spiral in which the Onceler's obsession with biggering and biggering causes the environment to be ruined. All the trees are cut down, they dump gross shit into the water, and there's no more food for the animals to eat. They all leave, and the Onceler is left to ponder his failing fortune now that all the trees are gone. Years later, he tells the story to a young boy and gives him the last truffula seed and says,
"Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not."
And expresses a hope that by caring for the environment, we can reverse the damage that's been caused to it, and the Lorax might someday come back. If you want a really nice way to experience this story but hate reading, like some kind of psychopath, totally track down the original 1972 animated special, which is produced by Dr. Seuss himself. I know it's on Hulu, but also readily available for free on YouTube as well. It tells the original story basically faithfully, with the minor additions of more conversations between the Onceler and the Lorax and some catchy as shit bops. You might have noticed that this is not the Illumination version. That's because the Illumination version ruined everything. They had such a fundamental misunderstanding of the story, it seems, or in an effort to turn it into a full-length movie, they got the message so confused that Dr. Seuss probably rolls in his grave every time someone draws a picture of this motherfucker. You'll have to take my word for it on the moment that this movie commits many other grave sins, because we're only going to talk about this dude in an effort to prevent this video from turning into a The Lorax 2012 takedown. So, essentially, in the original story, the Onceler is only represented by a pair of green-clad arms, and sometimes legs, because he's not really supposed to be a person. He's supposed to be a representation of the destructiveness of unbridled capitalism. So in the Illumination version, they make him a hipster twink. Not only a hipster twink, but an entirely redeemable and forgivable hipster twink, because his family are the ones that pressured him into destroying the environment, you guys. Complicated people don't exist, and the world is black and white. Old women bad, hipster twink good, hipster twink sexy. Apparently, don't look at me. This is the one sexy man that I never got into, that I never understood. That is probably due to the fact that even when it first came out, this movie disgusted me because The Lorax was and still remains one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. Apologies to anyone who actually likes this movie because I hate it and I will not be silenced. But what all this means is that I never watched this movie. I still have only seen clips and a general synopsis because for years I had no intention of supporting it and didn't know the gift of sailing the internet seas yet, and by the time I did, I didn't really care anymore. However, I've watched enough videos on the movie and specifically about the Onceler that I still feel like I can talk about this topic in at least some detail. So, The Lorax hits the theaters, teenage girls see this.
How bad and can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally.
And their uteruses all simultaneously explode, apparently. Of course, you might be asking yourself, this is a kids' movie antagonist. Why are teenage girls getting so horny over it? Well, fun fact, this is a whole trend, but we will get into that later, I promise. For now, uteruses were exploded and a new horde of fangirls took to the popular site at the time, Tumblr, obviously, and began to go nuts. Now, none of these girls, or others, don't want to judge, cared a lick about the Loraxes of film. They only cared about this one hipster twink. To back up my point, the silly fandom name they gave themselves was Oncelings, and thus the fandom of the Onceler, the cult of the Onceler, was born. Of course, the problem is that there was only so much content about this hipster twink, and there only ever would be. Because if they'd somehow tried to milk a sequel out of the Lorax, I literally would have single-handedly stormed the Illumination offices myself. Plus, the much more pressing issue for these young, confused, and horny fangirls was that there was no convenient character within shipping distance for this dude. I mean, I guess there's Danny DeVito, but Tumblr wasn't that freaky yet. So in an act of cannibalism only ever repeated once since, they shipped him with himself. They split the dude into the UK hipster boy and the semi-post-capitalism sadist. Do not ask me what those Japanese terms mean or why I know them, you can look them up yourself. And then they started making Onceler alternate universes where the hipster twink was a scientist or a doctor or a barista, and eventually they had whole worlds populated almost exclusively by Oncelers, and then it just suddenly died because this whole thing was propped in the back of about an hour of content, and thus ended the Onceler craze. Can we please move on? The next couple of years saw the Sexy-Man fans jumping from sexy boy to sexy boy. In this time period, many of the conventions and tropes that made a sexy man became well established. Bishy anime boys with spiky hair and shark grins proliferated the Tumblr space, all with fangirls screaming about how cute this mass murderer was, or how crazy fuckboy number 12 had caused their ovaries to cease functioning. But none ever asserted their pure dominance over the trope ever again. There were some strong contenders, like Bill Cipher or Jeff the Killer, but none that lit the entire internet on fire quite like the Onceler had. Until late 2015, at least. Because that's when a little game called Undertale came out. Okay. I do have a small confession to make. I really like Sans Undertale. I think he's awesome and really fucking funny. He also has an exceptional amount of angst material, and at the time when the Undertale fanbase was at its height, I liked a lot of fan art. And I also maybe wrote one or two really short fan fictions that never saw the light of day because even at the time I knew they were really silly.
In all of her travels in the underground, she had only ever met two skeletons, him and Papyrus. Why was that? There were dogs and lizards galore, bulls and fishes and ghosts, but no skeletons. It made her feel uneasy.
But I promise you, I never, ever wanted to jump his bones, or his ghost penis, whichever the artist or writer preferred at the time. Or if I did, it was only for like 3 days, and then I realized how fucking weird that was and stopped. So, Sans. We have to talk about Sans. Undertale is, in the simplest terms, a game about a small child named Frisk who falls into a massive cave and becomes trapped in the underground, which is a world of monsters who have been banished there since a war with the humans ages ago. They would very much like to get out, and with Frisk's help, they just might be able to. Of course, Undertale is better known for its innovative mechanic of fighting enemies versus sparing them. You can finish Undertale without killing a single enemy, and in fact, you get a better ending for the cast if you do play this way. However, if you do the opposite, if you decide to slaughter every last innocent monster in the underground, then Sans gets fucking pissed at you. Sans is, generally speaking, an easygoing guy. Skeleton man. He likes eating ketchup and making puns and hanging out with his little brother Papyrus. But throughout the game, he gives you little warnings and hints that there's something a little sinister beneath his friendly surface, and if you go on this genocide route, as it's come to be called, he will attempt to kill you. Sans is frankly a really bizarre, out-of-left-field entry into the Sexy Man canon. Of course, by the trope's literal definition, he absolutely belongs here. He is a non-human character who is by no means considered attractive by the game he comes from, acts in an antagonistic role, and has a horde of exceptionally dedicated fangirls who want that aforementioned ghost cock that he doesn't actually have. But if you dig into the minutia, nothing aesthetically about him would seem to attract all these same fangirls. He is not tall and thin, instead being rather short and stubby. He is not well dressed, quite the opposite in fact, and he is not slick, smooth, or suave, and is certainly not British. So why did he get all the chicks? There are honestly probably several reasons for this. It could be the meta qualities he possesses, which is an oft-repeated trait for sexy men. It could be his silly personality hiding something deeper beneath. What attracted me to the character, at least, was the potential for him to be something more than what was on the screen. I had a whole backstory for Sans that I made up. It was really stupid. Don't ask me about it. Because Undertale as a game is super open-ended. There are a lot of details and questions about the underground and the broader world around it that are never filled in and never answered, which leaves a lot of room for thinking and daydreaming, and a lot of room to insert angst. There are so many, and I mean so many, fan works that depict this side of Sans, even though it wasn't really present in the game. In Undertale, Sans really is that cheery, goofy skeleton man, but has to become more angry to face you. If you dig really deeply into the character, you can get some incredibly small hints that he might potentially have a little bit of angst, but it's never discussed and he never gets even close to that level. But, of course, fangirls will be fangirls. But that is not the reason that Sans became so ubiquitous and so frankly annoying to so many people on the internet. The way I see it, there are two main reasons why every time a new sexy man emerges, people will claim that he's going to be the new Sans Undertale. The first of these is that at the height of the fandom, Undertale fans were fucking annoying. There are a couple of fan bases that became rather infamous for being awful. Voltron, My Little Pony, even Homestuck for a hot second were considered pretty vile fan bases to find yourself a part of, but none even remotely comes close to Undertale. We are still atoning for the fact that we bullied Markiplier so hard that he didn't even finish the game. For the record, that we is metaphorical, I swear. And the main trait of the wild Undertale fan was the fact that none of us would shut up about this fucking game. For about an entire year, you could find fan art and memes of Undertale characters everywhere, and a lot of people who might have played the game got turned off by the amount of people telling them that Undertale was the second coming of Jesus Christ. And no character was more popular than Sans. Though the Onceler brought the existence of the sexy men to the general internet's attention, Sans is the character that made the trope what it is, that made it so violently despised. And of course, it wasn't even Sans' fault, it was the crazed fans. The other reason is, of course, the massive amount of Undertale AUs that came into existence around this time as well. You know how I mentioned that Onceler fans made alternate universes populated by Oncelers? Yeah, well, Undertale turned that into an art form. There was Underfell and Underswap, Outertale, Horrortale, Fellswap, Swapfell, the list goes on and on and on. And, of course, in all of these AUs, all of the Undertale characters were included. But there were more AUs than that. But most of these AUs didn't have a completed world or roster of characters. They were all just focused on Sans. Fresh Sans, Error Sans, Ink Sans, whose literal purpose is apparently to encourage people in creating their own AUs. Yeah, it was at that point that Sans kind of turned into his own fan base that nearly separated from the rest of the game. I was never someone who got into this trend, so forgive me if I seem to talk about it with a little disdain. This is really a discussion for another video, but being a writer myself, I always feel uncomfortable with taking someone's creation and turning it into something else entirely. There's nothing wrong with it, of course, but it always feels to me like that's someone else's character. They're not there for me to do with as I please. But regardless, Sans infested nearly the entire internet to the point where to this day we are still seeing memes about Sans Undertale. It's calmed down since then, but if you ever hear someone calling your new favorite character the new Sans Undertale with a disgusted tone, now you know why. Since then, the sexy man trend has died down somewhat. They still absolutely exist, there are more every day. In fact, there's now a whole wiki and encyclopedia dedicated to cataloging these sexy men, but I truly believe that we will never get another Onceler, another Sans, ever again. There is probably never going to be another character that sets the entire world on fire, because the fact is, many of those people, those girls who fawned over these characters, are like me. We've grown up now. I won't say that we've moved on, because show me a British twink and I'm still down for the count, but I'd like to hope that we've matured somewhat, that we can look back on those days with fondness, but with the hindsight of the inherent silliness of it all. I am still very much a fan of sexy men, but more of an ironic one now, and I think there are a lot of other women who would say the same. But of course, for every generation that grows, there is another just waiting to take its place and drool and scream over the next generation of silly, sexy boys. Well, I've officially done it. I can nearly guarantee that at this very moment you are shaking your head and contemplating drinking the bleach under the sink. But we are not done yet. Oh no, we've still got half the video left, my friend. You're here now, and you're here forever. So far, I've mentioned in passing several traits that make up the common sexy man, but I haven't really gotten into what or why they are. So I'd like to do that. I'd like you all to be able to recognize a brand spanking new sexy man from a mile away. So, in no particular order, let's spend some time discussing the common makeup of your average sexy man. Question for you. What type of girl doesn't like a sexy villain? That's a trick question, motherfucker. We all do. Villains are awesome. Villains are cool. And villains are sexy. Every villain is sexy. Especially triangles and balls. Honestly, it'd be way easier to list the sexy men that aren't villains or at least act as antagonists in some way. I don't really know how else to say it. This one's pretty straightforward. In real life, most of us would never dream of being interested in someone who acts like most of these sexy men. And those that do are probably not going to live very long. Or are just really kinky. But in the world of fiction, villains are just plain fun. They don't have to be bound by convention or morals like the heroes do, and that often makes them much more interesting, complex characters. Take the Joker, who I think counts on this list, but I'm also a little weird. Yes, Batman has a tragic backstory. Yes, his life and mindset have been analyzed to death at this point, but would anyone really read about this depressed sad boy who cries about his parents like 20 years after the fact if it wasn't for his rogues gallery? If it wasn't specifically for the Joker? The Joker is fascinating and terrifying, and above all else, just plain having a good time. He's incredibly malleable, and it's so easy to do your interpretation of the character while still having him be recognizably the Joker. And unfortunately, this fascination with characters like this, for us storytelling folk at least, often translates into horniness. There are two types of people who like these characters, and which ones they like will often tell you which category they fall under. The first is the type that wants to fix these villains, that wants to hug them until they feel better and stop killing people. These fangirls are much more likely to attach themselves to more sympathetic villains, characters that have a chance at redemption. More often than not, these will be the guys who aren't straight up evil, but just end up being antagonists based on the circumstances of the story. Obviously, Sans Undertale is a primary example of this, but the Onceler and Wheatley are here as well. The other type are the people that like the characters because they're villains, and these people are either really messed up or writers. Hey, try to guess which one I am. The more psychopathic the sexy boy, the more these girls will cream their jeans. Fangirls like this like a good evil laugh and a slasher smile. God, this entire section is just me adding myself. Bill Cipher is probably who you thought of when I mentioned this trope, but there's also Tony the Talking Clock and Vincent from Five Nights at Freddy's. Taking non-human characters and drawing them as if they were people is really fun. Anthropomorphizing in general is really fun. People are inherently drawn to other people more than they are to objects or abstract concepts or monsters, although that last one isn't always true. So the question then becomes, if you're going to draw them as human, why not make them good looking as well? Unless you're specifically drawing the character to not be hunky, odds are this is how they're going to end up. Humanizing non-human characters is also very popular because you can make them look however you want. There's no design that you have to base the look off of, which leads to a lot of different interpretations, which leads to even more obsession as you try to find all the different ways people have drawn your boy in the exact same scenario. Okay, I think I have to stop now. Common examples include Wheatley from Portal, Bill Cipher again, and Bendy of Ink Machine fame. Who doesn't like a well-dressed man? This often ties into non-human designs, as 9 times out of 10, if fans are given the free rein to interpret a character any way they want, it'll be as a skinny beanpole in a suit. There's also canonical examples of this, of course, which often is a contributing factor in the sexy man status of the character in the first place. Examples include King Dice from Cuphead and Regan from Mob Psycho 100. You might be wondering, Hedgehog, why are you sweating? It's because I like crazy people, okay? Fictional crazy people. This one builds off of the villain trope, as many villain sexy men are also psychopaths. I don't really know how to explain this one, even though I am the example, so I probably should. Maybe it's because unlabeled psychopathy combines the best of slasher smiles, fun moments, and usually loads and loads of angst to explain how they got that way. Psychopaths are really interesting characters, and angst makes me horny. These characters also tend to be ensemble dark horses and usually steal the show because not only are the fans crazy about them, but usually the creators are too. Trade secret. Crazy characters are incredibly fun to write because they don't have to follow the usual conventions of society. As long as it fits in with their already established character, you can really have them cause any kind of chaos you want. And when the writer is having fun with a character, usually the audience is too. Common examples of this trope include Nagito Komaeda from Danganronpa and Jeff the Killer. Some types of media have more fourth wall breaking than others. Homestuck made a name for itself when the fourth wall was literally smashed to pieces in-universe, and truly interesting stories have been told in moments when the wall between the viewers and the story comes crashing down. Some of the most effective stories with this element, and coincidentally the easiest to accomplish, is with video games. Since the viewer is already an active participant, it's very easy to break the fourth wall in either a philosophical or a mechanical way. The game One Shot, for instance, literally has you solving puzzles by utilizing your desktop outside of the game itself. Generally speaking, fourth wall breaks are either played for laughs or for scares, and there are many horror games in particular that have made names for themselves by scaring the living bejesus out of a player. If played in this more frightening tone, having a character in the game suddenly break the fourth wall can be terrifying, or mysterious. If anything, especially if they are one of the only characters to do this, it would certainly make them stand out in your mind. This isn't a trope that by itself can indicate a sexy man, but mysteriousness is, and those two tropes often go hand in hand. Examples include W.D. Gaster from Undertale and Zachary from Off. Do I even need to explain this one? Angst gives a character depth or makes them
#Dave.
And yes, those are two entirely different things. Interesting characters get attention, and characters particularly being sad or angry gets all the fangirls because we just want to hug them until all the pain goes away. It's okay, Wheatley. I know you're an idiot, but I'll love you anyway, even if you betrayed me and turned GLaDOS into a potato. Sorry, what was I talking about again? Right. Angst. Making a character sad or angry about circumstances outside of their control makes them relatable to us, makes them seem even more human. We sympathize. Even if the particulars of the angst are absurd or strange, we can all relate to being sad or angry or powerless, and it makes us feel closer to these sexy men. I don't think there's a single sexy man out there that doesn't have even the potential for angst, or at least for causing angst in other characters, even if it's not explicitly covered in their source material. So this trope is obviously an incredibly important part of the makeup of the sexy men, and it's all because of stupid humans being able to relate even with people who don't exist. It's a little fascinating, and amazing actually. Best examples I can think of for more canon portrayals of angst are the Phantom of the Opera, or Eric as the fangirls affectionately call him, Cicero from Skyrim, and Doug Ratman from Portal. So, this is a bit of a weird one. It's not so much a trope as it is a weird trend. A lot of sexy men, and I mean a lot of them, come from media originally aimed at children. Bill Cipher, the Onceler, Foxy from FNAF, almost the entirety of the male cast from Legend of Zelda, the list goes on and on. Now, of course, in recent years, adults watching and enjoying children's media without children necessarily being in the picture has become way more normalized, partially because children's media has started dealing with more complicated concepts, and a whole subgenre for kids about 8 to 13 has finally been filled. I would have loved if a show like Gravity Falls had existed for me then. As it was, when its first season aired, I was already 13 and didn't have access to cable anyway. But I think there's another reason for this. Now, this theory I have is pure psychological conjecture, and the only proof I have are the experiences of those I've come across online, and of course my own. My thinking goes like this. Girls usually begin to hit puberty sometime between the ages of 11 to 13, and a whole lot of stuff is going on at the time. Their bodies are changing, and they're beginning to experience new things and new emotions, of course, but also romance and boys and growing up are things that are being shoved constantly in their faces. This would obviously cause a lot of curiosity and or confusion, and most girls aren't quite ready to grow up yet, even if they say they are. So most of these girls are still watching movies and playing games that are intended for children. So the newly discovered horny and the children's character get all mixed up. These girls go online, have no idea how to properly conduct themselves in this internet space, and some of the most infamous and crazy sexy men are born. I have no idea how accurate this theory is, but that's just a theory! A puberty theory! Thanks for what? Whole fandoms have been built off the back of a sexy voice. Believe me, I was there. I saw it happen. This trope does not apply to all people, just very specific ones. Like me. There's a reason I started voice acting, and it's because sexy voices turn me on. Whoa, who would have guessed? It's not like your life partner is a man with an incredibly sexy voice.
Well, during the recess, Your Honor, I went on the seesaw,
but you weren't there to be the other side of the seesaw, which was kind of low.
This trope also plays into the non-humanness factor, as oftentimes characters who don't even have humanoid forms will be fawned over incessantly solely on the merits of their incredibly sexy voice. Welcome to Night Vale is a podcast that made its fortune off of its amazing writing, of course, but also largely due to the incredibly smooth, silky voice of their main actor, Cecil Baldwin. So, obviously Cecil from Night Vale is the primary example, but my boy Wheatley definitely belongs here as well, because I mean, Stephen Merchant. Need I say more? Honk! And finally, there's one more topic we need to discuss. Because there are some characters that I wouldn't really consider sexy men, because going all the way back to the beginning of the video, they do not meet one of the requirements of sexy mandom. They are in fact viewed as sexy by the media in which they reside. Yet these characters are often counted among the sexy men because they were designed that way. Some creators have seen what kinds of male characters have stolen the hearts of fans and have begun to design them to cater to this demographic. This isn't always bad. Sometimes it's done out of love for the trope itself. Hey, listen, I know what you're thinking, but not all of my male characters are sexy men. Nico's too short. When it's done in this matter, I think these characters get too much flack, even if by my definition they don't really count as sexy men at all. So far, however, it doesn't seem as if there have been a whole ton of corporate, more sinister approaches to sexy man bait, but mark my words, it's only a matter of time. The closest I think we've gotten to anything other than mostly pure intentions is Toby Fox just realizing the lust women have for his male characters and just giving in and giving us what we want. It's a little hard to give examples for bait because we don't really know which are in fact bait or just happen to fit in a little too perfectly to the tropes, but people commonly cite Alistair from Has Been Hotel and Black Hat from Villainous. Alright class, here it is. We're nearing the end. But now comes the test, the hardest part. Now we're going to put together everything we've learned and are going to talk about the most common and infamous sexy men. Also just a couple that I like as well because I wrote the video so I get to talk about my boys, goddammit. Also, I'm going to primarily focus on sexy man examples that I actually know something about, so if there's one that you feel is missing, either I didn't think it was odd or noteworthy enough to place on the list, or most likely I just don't know enough about the character. Also, this section is going to be rife with minor spoilers, so if you care about the media that a particular character comes from, you might just want to skip that section. We've already covered the Onceler and Sans Undertale pretty well, I think, but now it's time to place the spotlight directly on those that I've been mentioning offhandedly for this entire video. So, starting with the hands down most mentions award, let's talk about Bill Cipher. Bill Cipher is the main antagonist in the Disney Channel show Gravity Falls, which at this point might be fading out of the public conscience, so if you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu. Seriously, it's like unironically really, really good. In all of his appearances, he appears as a triangle, like a nearly 2D triangle as compared to the 2D space the show takes place in. So you might be wondering, why? Why are people attracted to a triangle? A question I ask myself every day. And I have two words for you. Alex Hirsch. Alex Hirsch is the creator and showrunner of Gravity Falls. He looks like this, and he's a pretty neat guy. He's a lot like Justin Roiland of Rick and Morty fame in the way that he voices a lot of characters in the show that he created.
Kids, come quick! I need you to laugh at this with me.
And while he has an incredible vocal range,
You think I could take these burrito bites into Stan's brain? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
he still has a rather infamous voice. After a while, you can kinda tell when a character is voiced by him. Also, fun fact, he and Justin Roiland are buddies, and it's implied that their two shows take place in the same universe. For reference, here's the complete list of characters he voiced on Gravity Falls. You might notice a cheeky little name there. Oh, who's that? There he is. There's the boy. Yeah, so basically Alex Hirsch had way too much fun voicing this character, and that absolutely comes through in the writing and performance.
Dear teeth, for you, kid.
For the uninitiated, Bill Cipher is an interdimensional dream demon who first appears in the episode Dreamscapers, in which Bill is initially summoned by the up till then primary antagonist Lil Gideon. If you haven't seen the show, just don't worry about the details too much. It gets weirder. The two make a deal that Bill will find the combination to the safe containing the deed to the main character's great uncle's tourist trap called the Mystery Shack in exchange for an unknown favor later on. To this end, Bill invades the mind of Grunkle Stan, and the rest of the main cast have to follow Bill in order to stop him. They do, of course, with the power of imagination since they're in somebody's brain and, kids show, and for the moment, Bill is defeated. Since he's now been summoned, however, he comes back in the second season in a big way, and after a false start in the episode Sock Opera, ultimately brings us home, the Nightmare Realm, to the town of Gravity Falls, Oregon, causing the event known as Weird Mageddon. So people see this weirdo, this silly triangle man who is actually terrifying and unknowable. Jesus Christ, what's happening there? And their first thought is, ah yes, we must make him a hot smirky boy. Seriously, people go nuts for Bill Cipher. He's one of the most infamous sexy men simply because he's got it all. An antagonist ship, unknowable and alien motivations a la, do you know what he named his cat? Eye imagery, glitching, the triangle's a walking, talking sexy man stereotype. Plus, he's just so incredibly fun. He has a massive following entirely separate from the people who want to jump his, Yeah, I got nothing for this one. People go nuts for Bill Cipher. I think he's genuinely one of the best villains ever created. I should probably just make a video about him at some point. Also, I lied to you before. Bill does in fact have a canon human form. Here it is. Yeah, so Alex Hirsch actually really hates people being horny for him and drawing him as a sexy beanpole man, so he drew this design instead. It's pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. There's also Bipper, the canon possession of Bill Cipher in main character Dipper's body, but we don't have time to unpack what the fangirls did to that today. So, you might have noticed that throughout this video, there's been one sexy man in particular who's gotten an inordinate amount of screen time. Okay, listen. Bear with me. I'm in love with a talking sphere. I have been for many, many years. Wheatley, from the game Portal 2, has had an incredible amount of influence on the characters I enjoy and the characters I write. Wheatley is the deuteragonist and later antagonist of the game Portal 2. He's first introduced by waking the player character Chell up from a crazed robot-induced coma, and the two end up working together to escape the Aperture Science facilities. Of course, Wheatley's primary character trait is that he's a moron.
Could a moron punch you into this pit? Could a moron do that? No.
And he accidentally wakes up GLaDOS, the villain of the first game. She is obviously quite pissed about you killing her that one time, and Wheatley ends up breaking you out of torture testing. But when you finally confront GLaDOS, you end up plugging Wheatley into her mainframe and he goes mad with power, betraying you and turning GLaDOS into a potato. The second half of the game is spent crawling back up through the ruins of the facility and confronting Wheatley, who you eventually banish to the moon with your handy-dandy portal gun. There's also Blue Sky, the fanfic sequel to Portal 2, all about Wheatley coming back from space and getting human body, and Chell is fucking PTSD, but they fall in love, and there's angst, and oh my god, you guys, it's like actually super well written, holy shit. But we're not gonna get into that today. Needless to say, Portal's a pretty popular series, but Wheatley's popularity was a little crazy. Besides Bill Cipher, he is the character with the most human interpretations. Seriously, whole fanfics were written about how to get him back from space and in a human body. I wrote several drafts of my own variation on this story. No, you can't see them, but if you know where to look, you can definitely see some human Wheatley stuff that I posted online. Of course, Wheatley has a slight excuse for the human form stuff, partially because he's a robot, and there's a lot of ways you could make that work, but also because a lot of fan interpretations at least partially resemble his voice actor, Stephen Merchant. Stephen Merchant you might know as that one random dude on The Good Place, or the assistant guy in The Tooth Fairy. Okay, that reference is really old, but he's more famous for the fact that he's one of the dudes who wrote the original Office. Yeah, pretty wild. This explains why there's kind of some agreed upon rules for human Wheatley. He nearly almost always has blonde hair and glasses, but this basis in reality also makes Wheatley a bit of an anomaly in the human version department because not all interpretations of him are sexy. A lot of them are, but Wheatley is such a well-written character and such a hilarious man voicing him that he's got numerous fans who are not interested in boning him. Can't relate, but you do you. So actually, a lot of his human interpretations defy sexy man tropes. Some of them are a little older, some are slightly balding or short or beady-eyed. It's really interesting and still totally works for his character. Personally, my favorite human Wheatley is the one by Inani Bird, which, might look familiar to some of you. Yeah, this is literally the pic I sent Dragon as reference for the cowl drawing. Fun facts with Hedgehog, yay! Okay. Why? Just why? Is it because he has a British accent? It's because he has a British accent, isn't it? News flash for you people. All of the characters in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared have British accents because they're British. Also, I did have to confirm that his name was in fact canonically Tony because that just really feels like a name crazy fangirls would give him. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a series of internet videos parodying children's puppet shows, while actually saying a lot of things about commercialism and how things are advertised to children, under this veneer of ludicrousy and horrific imagery. Each episode, the main 3 characters are taught a lesson by the teacher of the day. This ranges from a notebook in the episode on getting creative to a computer on an episode about technology. They get taught their lesson, but by the end of the episode, everything always devolves into whatever this is. But for some reason, everybody loves this fucking clock. I mean, I can see why. British, check. Nice voice, check. Snazzy dresser, check. I guess. Tall and thin, you betcha. So, yeah, I guess. But his human interpretation is one of the stranger I have seen. Why does he just have like 2 lines across his face? Is that like, it's a part of your morning ritual there, Anthony, my guy? He's also one of the more hunky-daddy sexy men I've seen, probably due to his lower-pitched voice. I don't know, this one's weird. I don't really get it.
Kanye West, he likes fingers in his ass. Kanye West, he likes fingers in his ass. Kanye West, he likes fingers in his ass.
So, Nagito's pretty infamous, and also very divisive. You're either in love with him or you hate his guts and all of the fans who are in love with him. I'm one of the rare Danganronpa fans with the brain capacity of an actual functioning adult, so I'm able to think about his character critically and separate him from the highly black and white perspective most of these literal children have about Danganronpa and its characters. So, as you can see, I'm a little bit salty about both sides of the Nagito argument. Let me explain. Each Danganronpa game follows the same formula. 16 kids are trapped in a closed environment and are forced to kill each other and attempt to get away with it by a crazy murder bear. They all also have a sort of overarching story, but that's not really relevant at the moment. Obviously, this means there are 16 characters of various importance based on when they are killed off, whether by being murdered or by being caught as a murderer and punished by the aforementioned murder bear. But, generally speaking, for each game there are 3 real main characters. There's the player character, the female love interest, and the male rival, and these characters form the point getters, i.e. the only ones who actually do any real deducing. As far as the rival character goes, the first game has Byakuya Togami, the third game has Kokichi Oma, who's also kind of a sexy man in his own right, and the second game has Nagito. To put it simply, Nagito's fucking nuts. He's supposed to be a satiric play on the main character of the first game, Makoto, who was sort of self-deprecating and in the end was all about hope and working together and stuff. In contrast, Nagito compares himself to literal garbage, idolizes the ultimates he finds himself in the presence of, and almost comes every time he says the word hope. He's the resident chaos gremlin of the series, known for helping out the killers at various points because he only believes in hope as a literal concept, entirely ignoring any context that might surround it. Of course, as most Danganronpa characters are, Nagito is actually a really deep and interesting character, and a lot of screen time is spent fleshing out his philosophy and how the various twists of the game alter his perception of that philosophy. But who am I kidding? 90% of Danganronpa fans have the minds of horny 12-year-olds, so all they see is either, OMG, crazy boys are so hot, and he's so sad, you guys, no really, or he's responsible for killing my waifu, where, overrated character, I'm gonna put a gun in his mouth and pull the fucking trigger! Okay. I'm salty. We get it. Now we can move on. Sorry, Danganronpa fans who are actually sane, like all 12 of you. Anyway, back to what's really important here.
Fingers in his ass. Fingers in his ass. Kanye West, he lies. Fingers in his ass.
So tell me about Vincent.
This guy.
Yeah.
This guy right here.
Okay.
Made people so fucking horny, and he's like 12 squares.
He is basically 12
now,
squares.
There is a human version of him with purple hair and manly features.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 2 today.
Okay.
2 other ones.
Okay.
This fuck, they full-blown Jeff the Killered his ass.
Look at him. He's so smirky.
And then there's this fuck with the pony. They got where's the ponytail? Where is it? Is it this? Did he cut it off? Okay, so back in whenever the fuck FNAF 2 came out, people saw this guy killing children, dismantling robots, and they were so horny.
Yeah.
Why?
Because
he's crazy.
Because he's crazy, yeah.
But he's not. Maybe he is. Who knows? We knew nothing.
I like crazy.
All we knew was a bundle of cubes and the sentence you can't, because he was killing children. This man killed children. But look at this shit. They were just like, oh yeah, so what if we didn't draw him at all like a person and we gave him big white eyes, big white smile, we Jeff the Killered him, gave him a ponytail because that's hot.
I mean, you can't say anything against that.
Yes, I can.
You lost the privileges.
Yes, I can. Just because I fall in suit. I'm a real human being, I hope.
Are you?
But this guy made people so horny.
Yeah.
And look at this.
Horny.
I hate you. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
He has made people so horny.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was so horny for fucking Purple Guy.
Yeah. So, I want you at some point though to tell me about the toast.
I'm not even on the fucking toast.
Okay.
Toast? You want toast?
I want toast.
There is. I don't even have a picture ready.
You have a picture
there
ready.
is. You know what? Purple Guy toast.
Oh, there's so many.
Look at this! It's toast! Everywhere! Why does he like you want to know why he likes toast? You want to know why he likes this? This is a badge! It's not toast!
It does kind of look like toast,
It's not
though.
toast. Why would toast be stapled to his lapel?
Because you really like
No,
toast.
fuck you. This is a fucking badge. And some people were like, hey, it kind of looks like toast. So they made it, why is toast? It's all toast. Toast, 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 toast. It's all toast. And you know what the best part is?
What's that?
They were like, what is the perfect name for this?
Yeah.
For this thing that we've bastardized.
Yeah.
Vincent.
That's a pretty hot name.
Why Vincent? What context clues led you to Vincent? Other than, hey, Vincent sounds kind of nice.
Yeah.
No! And then we don't even, to be fair, we don't even get me fucking started. We don't even know if it's William or whoever the fuck. But it's not Vincent. It's definitely not
How
Vincent.
do you know?
And he fucks, okay, and then the phone guy gets given a phone head, and he becomes his little, like, twink fuck buddy.
Yeah.
And this guy just plows the phone ass.
Yeah.
Why? Those characters have had no established connection. And the toast!
Oh, the toast.
And the toast!
Yeah.
Why? Why does this exist? I mean, I know why it exists,
Memes.
because the internet will forever be horny.
Memes.
But why? Guys, he killed children! Why does that make you so horny?
So, shameless plug here. If you want to see this one in real time, you should totally check out the Rodent Reading Hour, the silly little podcast where my buddy Miceman and I read terrible fan fiction. As an aside, Miceman is also a sexy man in his own right, which is why I'm showing this picture of Linguini to represent him. But unfortunately, he is not fictional, so he is not listed here. Sorry. Podcast. We just finished reading a fanfic called Insanity, which is all about, you guessed it, Jeff the Killer. Now that we've covered the biggest of the big, I thought we'd take a moment to dive into the creepypasta entries because, Jesus Christ, a lot of sexy men come from creepypasta. If you count Tony the fucking clock, which might count, there are 5 of them on this list alone. And if you're talking about creepypasta sexy boys, there's only one place to start. Jeff the Killer is the name of the creepypasta and the guy associated. He's a serial killer with a tragic backstory. I don't know the specifics because every time I try to read the actual creepypasta, it gets seared into my fucking eyeballs with how badly written it is. Like, for real, I can never get past the first paragraph. And yes, I know there's a new version, but I literally couldn't care enough. So from my new knowledge from Insanity, which is at least kind of funny, and the wiki description, Jeff the Killer is a teenager who got into a tussle with 3 bullies, and in the struggle he got covered in bleach and lit on fire by one of them. He wakes up in the hospital and, instead of receiving horrific facial scarring from the incident, it turns out that now his face is bleached white and his lips are dyed bright red. for some reason. Okay, so far so Joker. The doctor, for some reason, lets him go home even though he's cackling about how beautiful his new face is. Yeah, so Jeff loses his mind, carves open his mouth so he's always smiling, and slices off his eyelid so he can always see his face. God damn, this man's eyes must be dry. He kills his family and while stabbing his brother, whispers the now infamous phrase, "Go to sleep." So yeah, if there was any question that the Joker was a sexy man, well, here he is as a teenager and somehow even edgier. Okay, but in all honesty, as much as this one should appeal to me, I didn't read the story at an age when it would have been impressive, and now it just seems a little silly. Although I will freely admit that some artists make him really good looking. Like, okay, I see you. I don't really get it, but I see you. Why do people want to fuck Slender Man? Why do people want to be fucked by Slender Man? Why do people want to be fucked by Slender Man? Why do people want to be fucked by Slender Man? Why do people want to be fucked by Slender Man? Okay, listen, don't look at me like that. Legend of Zelda was a big part of my childhood, and I started playing it when I was younger than even Young Link was, so cut me some slack. Ben Drowned is, again, both a character and the name of the actual creepypasta, but this one is actually really well written and also has videos showing the things that are described in the writing. I first read it when I was 12 and my parents weren't home and I almost shit my pants. Ben Drowned is the story of a college student who goes by the username of Jaduzible. While browsing some garage sales, he comes upon a strange, hand-labeled copy of Majora's Mask and ends up buying it. But the game is not normal. Upon booting it up, there's a file already in place with the name Ben, and as he starts playing, there get to be more and more glitches, and this creepy-ass statue starts following him. Then he starts seeing things outside of the game. It's revealed that there's a demon of sorts stuck in the cartridge, and whether this is Ben or it killed Ben is never actually explained, but apparently the game used to belong to him before he died by drowning. Jaduzible ends up going a little bonkers, and it is unclear whether he survives to the end of the story or not. It's one of the better written creepypastas out there, and like I said, the author Alex Hall went full out in glitching out an emulated version of Majora's Mask for real video footage. Beyond that, there's a lot more, like Ben Drowned turned into a whole ARG. Go watch Nightmine's video if you want a good rundown of it. I think part of Ben Drowned's appeal is that since the only form we really know him in is that of the weird Elegy of Emptiness Link statue that follows Jaduzible around, Ben by extension looks like Link. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a straight woman who grew up with Zelda and is not attracted to Link. Basically, people have used Ben, at least in appearance, to be this sexy, dark version of Link. Generally speaking, he's got blood dripping from his eyes and a really big smirk. I don't know why fan artists just decided this was how he looked because it's not really part of the story, but it's fine. But you might be asking, isn't Link in Majora's Mask a child? Yeah, but most people, when they make Ben Drowned hot, draw him a little older, so it's better? Yeah, Ben Drowned's kind of the Shota variant of Sexymen, which I don't like. Don't look at me. I'm not a fan of Shota boys. What could possibly make you think that? I don't want to do other things with them. I don't. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not a pedophile. Stop.
A friendly desert community where the sun is hot, the moon is beautiful, and mysterious lights pass overhead while we all pretend to sleep. Welcome to Night Vale.
I mean, yeah. But no, seriously, talk about a fan base, a whole community built on the back of solid writing and one really sexy voice. Cecil Palmer, to be even more confusing, the actor's name is also Cecil, is the host and main character of the audio drama Welcome to Night Vale. The conceit is that Cecil is the host of a show on the town of Night Vale's local radio station. However, Night Vale as a town is a little weird. Angels live there, a 5-headed dragon runs for mayor, there are wormholes and glow clouds and crazed wheat and wheat byproducts. It's a comedy podcast, to be sure, but done in this really unnerving, dark, and even sometimes touching way. Night Vale is kind of single-handedly responsible for the modern wave of audio dramas, paving the way for things like the Magnus Archives, among others. The reason for its popularity? The strange people and even stranger things that happen in the town, for sure, but largely, it was Cecil. His performance is utterly brilliant. I can't really explain it super well, but Night Vale is available entirely for free on most places that you can find podcasts, so just go listen to it. Of course, when you spend hours upon hours listening to these honey drop tones, you kind of end up with an idea of what this guy looks like. And there are a lot of different interpretations as to what that might be. Not just because the fans were not given much to go off of, but also because the weirdness of the town itself indicated that he might not look entirely human or normal. There are a couple of standbys though. Generally speaking, he's drawn with either blonde or white hair and tends to have an undershave. Usually he has glasses, occasionally not, but he always has some sort of tattoo running up his arms, always containing tentacles of some kind. He's usually depicted as being anywhere from his late 20s to early 40s, and some of these older depictions have serious daddy energy. Cecil is also a bit of an oddball in the fact that a lot of the time he's not pasty. Almost all sexy men are pasty, and Cecil can be, but for the most part he's drawn with tan skin, and is one of the only sexy men to not be exclusively drawn as white, which is pretty cool, honestly. Good for him.
Slime. There is no more slime, brother. And anyway, shit was motherfucking poison. Didn't you know? Get motherfucking school-fed all about this wicked news, punchline-blooded motherfucker. It rots you. Rusts your motherfucking think pan. And the floor all stares up back at you through the motherfucking hole. But there is no hole now. Only under motherfucking standing of who I was made out to be all along. Only under motherfucking standing of who all I was made out to motherfucking be all motherfucking long. I've been kicking the wicked ignorance on this shit. Been motherfucking slaughtering the wicked ignorance, bro. All up in lifelong denial about my calling. As a descendant of the high motherfucking subjugulators. We are higher than you, brother. We are higher than motherfucking everybody! Honk. And now, I'm the last one. So I finally motherfucking understand. I finally got my motherfucking understand on as to who the mirthful messiahs are. They were always both me. And also motherfucking me! And now, and motherfucking now, I'm gonna motherfucking kill all you motherfuckers. I'm gonna motherfucking kill all you motherfuckers! And paint the wicked pictures with your motherfucking blood. From your veins will drip my miracles! Your crushed bones will make my special stardust. Welcome to the Dark Carnival, brother! Honk. Honk! Honk. Honk!
Need I say more? If you hang around indie game circles at all, you know this guy. He's really weird looking. But, everything in Off is really weird looking, and honestly, he's the closest to a sexy guy we get in that game. In Off, you play as an avatar called the Batter. I say avatar because Off has no fourth wall, and you as the player are kind of the main character. The Batter is called the Batter because he wields a bat, and his goal is to purge this world of unholy spirits. So you spend the whole game beating the shit out of ghosts with the bat. Don't know how that works, but okay. However, this world is really, really weird. Cows produce metal, breathable air is mined underground, and sugar is made of people.
You gotta tell him! Silent breed is
Sugar! But one of the weirdest and most unexplained things in this world is the merchant Zachary. We only get 2 clips of his voice, and I'm already in love.
Meow.
Zachary is one of the 2 characters in the game who openly acknowledges you as the player, but the other one's a cat, so we very well can't lust over him. No. At some point about halfway through the game, Zachary even replaces the cat as your main guide through the game, getting the swanky mask that everyone draws him in, because this is much easier to lust after than this. Zachary is fun because in a game where a vast majority of the NPCs are devoid of any sort of emotion, Zachary jokes. Zachary pokes at you, and Zachary has that bizarre sense of unease that permeates the whole game, but sometimes specifically centers on him. Unless I spend an absorbent amount of time breaking the entire game down, I won't be able to really explain any further, but people go crazy for Zachary, and it's all because of this.
Meow.
Finally, I'd like to give a shout out to the 2 newest additions to the Sexy Man canon. We of course have
Spamton! Gee, Spamton!
from Deltarune, because every single Toby Fox release contains at least one Sexy Man. I think it's like the law now? Spamton is awesome and very fun and the most gremlin-like of any Sexy Man you'll encounter. And finally, of course we have... Wait. What? Hold on. Finally, we have Huggy Wuggy from Poppy Playtime.
Oh my god. Oh my god, he's so sexy. Why? Why did they... What the fuck? Also, since I've written this script, I just want to point out, there's more of it. There's so much more of it now. Oh no.
Oh my god. We did it. We made it through. We have sifted through this entire bog and come out of the other side with a treasure trove of goodies. These bootleg pictures of Bill Cipher's triangular ass are gonna make us rich, I tell you, rich! But here we are. I hope that if you were a person who didn't understand Sexy Men or actively poo-pooed them in anything besides a good-natured way, that you have now realized why people like them so much. I hope that by breaking this down, you have perhaps gained a little understanding and a little respect. And for the rest of us, I hope you had fun ogling your eyes out over all these sexy boys for the last hour. Am I right, ladies? Basically, sexy men are harmless, at least in my eyes. Usually they're characters that a lot of people love, and unfortunately some of them are characters that a lot more would if not covered by the stigma of being that one character who wets teenage girls' panties. Because, really, teenage girls are not the scum of the earth that you think they are. Some of them are trash beings, of course, but many of them are amazing and thoughtful and so talented. I hope the art that I've been showing throughout this video has convinced you of that. Also, I included all the artists' names, so maybe go look them up if you like their art. Teenage girls are not to blame for the state of the current internet, and their love of cute anime boys is, for the most part, harmless. So now, the call to action. I hereby declare that the real culprits of everything bad on the internet are really preteen Fortnite boys. We are going to take this battle right to their doorstep. We will raise our pitchforks high and destroy these monsters. So who's with me? Hello? Anybody? Oh, okay.
Hey, thank you guys so much for watching that madness. As you can see, my patrons are scrolling up on the screen beside me. If you are interested in supporting this and maybe some voice acting stuff on my main channel, feel free to follow the link in the description below to my Patreon. That would be so highly appreciated. So much, you guys. Never saying you guys ever again. Speaking of which, I have a main channel. This is not my main channel. I mostly do voice acting stuff on the main channel, but I also live stream there, usually once a week on Saturdays, and I also post my stories. You might have noticed that a certain someone named Cowl got mentioned several times during this script, and if that has any interest in you, if any of the things I said about my stories interest you, then please, 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 there is a video down below of the whole Hedgehog Storytime playlist. A lot of it is part of the Edie Valley series of stories, which is like over 100 episodes, and I don't know, people liked it, so please give it a shot. It's like an audiobook. You put it on the background. Just listen to my stories, please, I beg of you. Okay, thanks guys, bye!